So Damien, markets have been fairly erratic so far this year. What's happened really, and why have they been so erratic?
You're absolutely right, and if we look back a little bit more, in the past 18 months, we've had a succession of crises. It all started after the pandemic when economies reopened and we were all, very enthusiastic about spending money outside, going back to the pub, and that really pushed pressure on the demand side, while actually we had issues with supply chain. That pushed, inflation up. That was followed afterwards by central banks. Because they wanted to curb inflation, they stopped, a decade of, easing policies to really then start thinking about how can they bring inflation down. And one of the first measures they use is to raise interest rates. And by doing that, they spooked investors. They didn't expect such a significant rise in interest rates. That was a very difficult time for equity and bond markets. That was then followed by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which pushed, as we all know, energy prices up, but then also was then adding fuel to the fire, so to speak, to inflation. And forcing central banks to go even further and raise interest rates even further, and pushing investors to fear about a recession coming. So as those crises were unfolding, the markets really were reacting negatively, and we really saw, throughout 2022 markets, both equities and bond markets going down. And as we were coming to the end of 2022, we start seeing inflation starting coming down a little bit, but then plateauing, pushing central banks to say, well, hang on, inflation is not coming down as much as we thought it would, so then we're going to rise interest rate further. And then we had this crisis around the banking sector, and we've seen a few relatively small American banks having some issues with the deposits, but then also we see a larger bank like Credit Suisse having some troubles, and then having to merge with UBS. So it's been a very challenging time for investors. You're absolutely right, because it feels like the time between two crises is becoming shorter and shorter. What we think is really important, looking back, really inflation has been the driving factor of these various crises. But we think that the reasons to become more optimistic about next year, or about this year and the following years, partly because inflation seems to be coming down.
Okay.